Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That is Kenny Simpson. We are joined today by Coach Cullen O'Brien out of the Florida area, East Coaster. What's up, Coach? How's things this morning, man?
Great. Not as humid as they normally are.
Yeah.
We got the opportunity to get out and practice this morning, which we love those when we get those morning practices, because then we don't have to compete with the fall lightning and wet bulb and all the fun things that come with playing football in Florida. So
that's everybody's favorite thing right now, right? It's the wet bulb.
Yeah.
Trying to get away from the heat and the water and even if it rains and cools it off, you got to deal with humidity. So, it's a long, everlasting battle. Well, man, we're super excited for you to join us on the podcast today. I'm going to go ahead and let you do your introduction real quick. Just tell us about yourself, your elevator pitch, if you don't mind.
Can't come up with a good one because I've been so many places. Well, I'm Cullen O'Brien. I'm a third-generation football coach. Pretty much got born into this profession, I tell everybody. A lot of people wonder if I had a choice, which I did in our family. My family did a great job of not forcing football down anybody's throat. But when you grow up on the sideline watching your grandfather, your uncle, and your dad all coach against each other and getting to be involved in the game, like that's what you go into doing. So I went through my playing years. I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, signed up to a Division II school in Minnesota called Southwest Minnesota State. Played 2 years there as a safety and then transferred over to Presentation College in South Dakota, where my dad actually got his first college coaching opportunity to go be a defensive coordinator. So he pulled me over from the Division II school, and I transferred over to a Division III school. Played 2 years with him there. Actually flipped back to quarterback because I played both sides of the ball. And then when I got into coaching, started at my previous school, Presentation College, for 1 year, and then moved over to my other previous school, Southwest Minnesota State, for another year. And I pretty much, getting to do the college coaching thing, realized that I wasn't big into the college coaching scene. I wasn't a big fan of recruiting. I didn't like treating kids like numbers on a spreadsheet, and kind of lost my love for the game and love for it, having to go through the recruiting thing and basically getting told to have to pull some kids' offers from them and deal with that process of like calling parents and telling parents like, hey, we just got this Division I drop back, so your kid doesn't have an offer anymore, and then getting, cussed out by parents and stuff and being like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like treating parents and kids like this. So that was when my dad, who had moved back down here to South Florida in the southwest corner in the 239, he got this job here at Ida Baker High School because my family hated the cold. They were up there for like 2 years, and they were like, yeah, we can't do this. We're going back to Florida. Have fun up there. Keep doing your coaching thing. And then, so they were down here in Florida, and my dad called me up one night when I was like, I don't know if this is for me, Dad. I don't think I'm going to be the next Nick Saban and keep climbing the college ladder. And he's like, sounds like you're ready to be a high school football coach. I think you need to come down here and give high school coaching a try. And it sounds like you're ready to be a teacher, which was ironic because all through my first 2 years coaching, I kept telling my family, my mom kept throwing it at me and being like, why don't you go, get your educator license and be a teacher? And I was like, that ain't happening. Here we are. 10 years later, I'm on my 11th year teaching. So,
well, they say never, right? That's
and
the quickest way to
ironically enough, when I jumped into it, because I was a big exercise science person into learning all about the body and anatomy. The only job they had open here at Ida Baker, where my dad was at, was marine science. And I passed the biology certification first try. And I've been a science teacher ever since. And I love doing it. I'm a science guy, and I'm all into the science stuff. So I've had an opportunity to move around to a couple different schools because I started here at Baker. And then when the head coach that started this program stepped down, and the next coaches kind of shift and moved here, pretty much the staff migrated to North Fort Myers across the way, a little more storied program and historic program. That's when I got the chance to get elevated and be co-coordinator for their offense, and we broke a bunch of records at that school. And then from that success, I ended up getting the opportunity to move to Gateway High School and start that one from scratch, and that was a whole journey in and of itself, getting to start a program from scratch. And then after 4 years there and a whole lot of stress because I was having to drive an hour back and forth across county, and I got, a newborn at home, and we ended up having a second kid. So I have a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old, 2 boys at home. I was like, I got to live closer to home. So I stepped down from that position. Ida Baker's 5 minutes from my house. I live over here on the west side of the county on the coast, over by the water. So I came back to Ida Baker, and I knew they were having a struggling season. I didn't even come back with intentions to be a head coach again. I came back with just like, hey, I'll help out. I'll coordinate. Give me a science position. I'll do something and help out the coach. And the coach that was there, we got close to winning a game last year, but it was another 0-10 season. And then he stepped down at the end of the season and took a job because he's ironically from the other side of the county. He lives in the neighborhood where I used to cook
places.
we kept telling him how we were like ships in the night passing each other in the previous year. We pretty much swapped places, and then they elevated me because they knew I had been here. They knew I knew the kids and knew the community. So they didn't even interview anybody. They just said, "Hey, you want the head job?" And I said, "Let's do it." And here we are, 5 weeks into the season. We're 2-2 right now. So we've had some success. We've ended our losing streak, and we're looking to get another one this week. And that's where I'm at in my career right now.
Well, ending I think you said it was it 3 0-10 seasons, so 30-game losing streak or more?
It was 2 0-10 seasons, and then they got on a losing streak when Hurricane Ian hit with the previous coach before that. And that coach stepped down after Hurricane Ian. So I think the loss streak was at like 27 or something like that. So it wasn't full 30, but the kids all called it Ian's curse because our school is the one close, the high school, there's some elementary schools that got absolutely destroyed by Ian. But we're the closest high school to the coast, and we were the one that our school pretty much had to get redone throughout Hurricane Ian. And all the kids were saying how it's Ian's curse because we hadn't won since Ian hit. So
That's tough. Well, man, I'm glad you got the chance to turn it around. It sounds like exactly what they needed and exactly what you needed. So
exactly.
Well, man, once again, thanks for jumping on the show with us. Coach Simpson, let's go ahead and knock out the quote of the week. We'll get to these ads and we'll get in a conversation. I'm sure guys want to know how Coach is turning things around there.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear Coach talk. And I think our first question we're going to be talking about is looking at, to turn things around, look at things from different perspectives. So I tried to pick a quote that kind of went with that. Again, all our quotes come from those Team Themes book. This is from Team Themes Volume 5. And it says, this is unknown as the author, a wise man learns more from his enemies than a fool does from his friends. And I think it's kind of a appropriate quote, the idea that we can learn from anybody. And a lot of times when you're looking at changing a culture, like Coach is working on doing, what we had at Southside here as well, you got to learn from anybody. It can't just be people you like or what you want to hear. Sometimes you got to hear that bitter news from maybe a bitter person, and they are speaking truth, and you got to listen to it.
Oh, that's a good one. Really good one. The let's jump to these ads real quick, Coach, if you don't mind. Just share some ways that we can make things simple for our staff and our athletes. All right. If you're listening live on Facebook, obviously we're going to go and put some digital ads. Is there anything we need to cover big coming out of here, Kenny?
Football season, man. It's just it is what it is.
Just keep banging through. All right. Sweet. Here we go. Appreciate that, Coach. Thank you once again to all of our sponsors, you guys that are actually listening through those and trying to use them. I appreciate, I got some emails this week from some coaches at schools of all kind of sizes that are trying to get the boards up, the video boards from Ace Sports. Guys, it really is the cheat code in fundraising. If you are at a school that needs to find that new way to pull in some finances, I think that's the way. Just reach out to Mark. You can talk to me first. I can get you in contact with him. Mark.bridges@acesports.com. And, of course, don't forget about Doug over at Winning Edge Performance Analytics. He's getting you 20% off this season. If you haven't started using, he's calling it WEPA now, WEPA, Winning Edge Performance Analytics. If you haven't started using WEPA, I think it's time to start. So jump in there. You get 20% off your first year over at winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com. Sweet. Let's go part one here. So Coach, once again, man, you talked about like moving, you started and obviously a couple of college places, which I think is big time that someone said, nah, that ain't for me. I'm ready to go back down to the high school level because some guys like that's the career trajectory, right? That's how you get to be a better coach is go to a higher level. And that's just not for everyone, right? We're all in just different places in life. But I kind of want to hear you talk about the importance of just seeing ball from different perspectives. Like it's very well known. I've switched schools several times as I just look to gain knowledge and work with great coaches. And in fact, repeating a year at a school this year will be my first year with a school 2 years in a row, which is very weird to say, but things are what they are. But I have heard a lot of voices and I've seen ball from a lot of different perspectives and guys that have no kids, guys that have so many kids, they're cutting people. And, ball looks different for everyone. So kind of how does that work with you? And you got to kind of move around and hear it from a different voice. Can you kind of talk about the importance of that?
I got to see ball pretty much my entire life. And that was, my dad talks about this quote all the time too, that, we don't know anything else in our family other in the fall than being on a sideline or getting to watch ball at all times. But I mean, they did a pretty good article. So when I came here the first time at Ida Baker, my dad was already working on the defense, and then we ended up pulling my grandfather out of retirement. My grandfather is in the Florida Athletic Coaches Association Hall of Fame coach. He coached at the University of Tennessee as their special teams coordinator, and Peyton Manning was there. So like getting to be around him all the time too, because it's kind of funny looking back at like how many people he had connections to in his life. Because I remember like hanging out at my grandfather's cabin up in the mountains in North Carolina, and like David Cutcliffe would call him all the time and check in on him and see how he's doing. And Phil Fulmer would like pop through and I would meet all these guys. Got to meet Cutcliffe, got to meet him, got to go to the Manning camp, and like Archie Manning goes walking up and gives my grandfather a huge hug and is like, "This is Coach O'Brien. He's the best guy. This is the guy you need to learn from. Come meet my sons. Have you heard of my sons before?" And I'm like walking up to Peyton Manning and Eli Manning and shaking their hand and being like, "Hey, how's it going? I got a poster of you on my wall, Peyton."
Right. I've heard of your sons.
Yeah, I've heard of your sons, Archie. But having my grandfather at that level and getting to see him, which my grandfather did the same exact thing. He was a legendary high school coach, got the opportunity to go and coach big time Division I college football at the collegiate level. And then he actually ended up going to a smaller FCS school, Western Carolina, and 4 coaching staffs recycled through and kept pulling him back out of retirement because he was such a good special teams coach. 4 different coaching staffs made him special teams coordinator at an FCS school. And then finally he was like, "I'm done. I'm retiring. All my grandkids are starting to play high school football. I want to go watch them all play high school football." And then that's when my dad pulled him back out of retirement and was like, "Nope, you're coming down to Ida Baker. We need a special teams coordinator here at Ida Baker." And all 3 of us got to be on the same staff here coaching out, like when I started my high school coaching career. So I've gotten to see the perspective, and the coach that was the current head coach, they did a whole news piece and news article on us. He talked about perspective and said how awesome it is to see the game of football through 3 different generations on one staff. How my grandfather sees it, where he's this like no nonsense and writes everything out on a sheet of paper, and he's tracking all the statistics, and he keeps the times on his kickers every single time of snap to kick, and he's got the data all broken down, and he's doing this at 75, sitting in his chair on the sideline with the kickers, and we ended up having like our best year of field goal percentages that year with him. And then my dad, who models a lot of stuff he does after Tony Dungy, where my grandfather was yeller and a screamer and very emotional, and because he was a former veteran. And then my dad's kind of the flip of that, because he learned from my grandfather, his father, and gleaned that he wanted to be a more reserved, arm around the shoulder kind of coach. And he says he always tries to be like Tony Dungy, love them first and then teach them on the side. And then you got me when I move into it, where I'm kind of a best of both worlds, where I'm the young one that can fit in with the kids. I can jump, I can dance, I can go rah-rah with them. But then also I get a little too heated and I turn into my grandfather at times, and I'm getting on them about what they're doing. But they said it was cool to see just 3 different generations with 3 different perspectives of the game of ball. And if you ever sat down and listened to all 3 of us watch ball together, we're all arguing about the same stuff of what the calls should be made and what coaches should be doing and this, and because each one of us has our own philosophy on it. But I loved what you said earlier, Kenny. I think what's changed my perspective in my career is getting to go a bunch of different places. I learned what didn't work the most as I've gone through all these different, getting to go up to the Midwest and coach college football. I was around some coaches, some good, some not, that I was like, definitely not doing that if I ever got the opportunity to be a head coach. Not going to treat a kid like that. Not going to say that to a kid and call a kid out like that coach just did, which I'm catching myself doing that now and remembering back to, yep, that happened. Don't want to do that. Don't want to say that to a kid. Don't want to act like that. And then getting to come back and be around some really good high school coaches that were running really successful programs around here and some running unsuccessful programs where I was like, I can see what works. I can see what doesn't, and just take the best and the worst of both worlds and get them to fit and get them to work together. And I had a really good coach that actually mentored me and kind of started the whole process of getting me to want to go back to high school football when I was at the Division II school, Southwest Minnesota State, and I was actually the baseball coach, had reached out to me. He had saw me in the office late one night and kind of pulled me aside. He knew I was a GA, so he came up to me with a box of pizza because they had just had an away game. He's like, hey, I got some leftover pizza. I know you don't eat. Here you go. Here's some pizza. And he just lays into me and starts talking to me because I'm telling him like how I'm going through a rough time right now and I don't know if this is for me. And he's like, don't worry so much about the ego of being a college football coach, because I know everybody thinks that that's the ladder you want to coach. Some of the greatest coaches I know are coaching at the high school level because they care more about kids. And he kind of laid into me too of like, I can tell that your heart's in the right place and you want to do the right thing for kids. Don't worry so much about the status and just focus on doing the job and doing the mission really well. So don't get upset if you go and coach high school football. I think that'd be a better fit for you. And I remember like that one sunk into me that night. And I was like, yep, this is what I need to do. This is where I need to be.
It's good to have that many people kind of pouring into you as well, right? Like that's when you kind of get to bounce around. Some people find one mentor in life, I feel like, and that's they get all their advice from one guy, which is okay. There's not really anything wrong with that. But man, when you start getting mentors at every level and they've all seen different things, that's really neat, right? I can reach out to lots of people in my coaching tree or my coaching journey and get great advice about how to handle situations or someday it will be time to hang up the whistle and like, what does that look like when, there's so many good pieces of advice to get from those guys. So, Kenny, same thing to you. I know that you've not been as many places, but you go out and get the good guys, right? And you pull the non-coaches into coaching so that you can have a great staff and pour into them. So I'd love to kind of hear that piece too.
Yeah, I think it's important. You do have a variety of knowledge. My dad was military, so when I grew up, I actually attended 3 different high schools. So I got to experience football in Florida when I was young, all the way like pee-wees and all the way up to like 9th grade. Then we moved. I got to experience it in Arkansas, which is where I am now. And then we moved to Arizona my senior year. So I got to kind of experience, like what Coach mentioned a little bit, what I liked and what I didn't like. Some coaches, I thought this guy's pretty good at his job, and some coaches I didn't. When you're a kid, nobody likes mean people. Like if guys are mean to you, but you had to kind of see through that and say, okay, no, I don't care if they're mean or not mean, they're coaching me hard or not coaching me hard. These guys knew what they were doing, and these guys didn't. And when you get to experience multiple coaches, you kind of figure out pretty quickly who really knows what they're doing and who doesn't. And then, when I got first job, I was in Alabama, so we moved around quite a bit there. So there's some experience type stuff there. But I knew early on, who did I want to be as a coach? Coach kind of mentioned it. He got 2 guys that modeled it for him. What did he want to be as a coach? And then you kind of have to figure out, okay, is this really true to who I am as a coach? Because you can't fake it. It sounds to me like Coach's grandpa, hardcore guy, kind of like that kind of guy. I've got one of those on my staff. Coach's dad, much more mellow and reserved. That's fine too. That's just true to who they are. And I think you have to kind of figure out who you are. Then I think on the flip side of that is you need to be aware of that and hire guys that are different. And that's what I think you were kind of pointing to, Daniel, is I know this is who I am, I can be kind of analytical. I can speak truth, and sometimes it's not very nice. So I probably need to go find 2 or 3 coaches that can relate to these kids, that when I make a kid really upset, I can say, hey, will you go talk to so-and-so and let them know we do care about them. We want good things for them. Not that I don't, but that's just not my nature. And then I want to have 2 or 3 guys that have experience. Ironically, my special teams guy is that guy near the end of his career, who's really, that's just kind of what he does and what he does well. But I think it's important as a coach when you build your staff to know who you are, and then to make sure you're filling in missing pieces with other guys, not just positions. But I think it's important, if you're an older coach, you hire younger coaches. If you're a younger coach, you go find an older coach. I think it's important you kind of have that. And that's not even getting into, I think, like if you're a staff where everybody's the same age, everybody's the same demographic, you're going to miss out on a lot of kids that you could hit. So I think it's important you kind of think about all of those things as you're making hires. And when you do that, you're going to have natural disagreements. You're going to have natural different viewpoints, and that's okay. It just has to make sure that we deal with that the correct way. So really like hearing Coach talk about it. Of course, we're not all blessed to have that background. He's very blessed to have what he did. But I think all of us can work to make sure that we are seeing different perspectives and making it happen. I do want to kind of also talk about, he said, and we got a lot of coaches that listen to our podcast, high school coaches that you mentioned it, Daniel, and Coach mentioned it, that you just kind of view, you go from youth coach to junior high coach to high school coach to college coach to maybe NFL coach. Maybe that's kind of your viewpoint of who knows more ball than anyone else. And Coach mentioned it. We've had several coaches on our podcast that have mentioned it. Small college football sucks as a coach. Like it's a lot of work. A lot of work you don't really want to do, that you need to be real wary of. Is that really the job you want, to go make $20,000, sleep on a couch? If that's something you want to chase it. But I see a lot of guys that are throwing away like families and throwing away things that are way more important than that for $20,000 to play in front of 1,200 people in an NAIA game. I'm not trying to be ugly to those guys. Those games matter. And if that's your goal, go chase it. But let's not, we had 10,000 people watch us play the other night, in a rivalry game. So it's not always, like Coach mentioned, not always this guy's better than this guy. I think there's good coaches in both levels, and it's okay to be satisfied with whatever level you're at.
Yeah, I think that is everyone's natural view. And it's because, I don't know, maybe it's just there's so many high school coaches, and the odds of your local one being really good at it are, maybe not the best. But when you turn on football on Saturday, it looks like at least they kind of all know what they're doing, right? So you get this perception that like the next level of ball is just full of really good coaches. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying any of them are bad coaches. But like you said, Kenny, and both of you have kind of reiterated, guys at every level can be the best coach that you ever meet. So don't fret. It's your youth coach down the street, maybe the best football coach in your county or in your state. And that's just where they feel their calling is. So there's no need to go chase anything else. When it comes to hearing different voices, I don't want to stick on this topic too much longer. You guys have covered a lot of it, but some of it is just learning what you don't want to do. I have seen at the high school level where they're treating kids just poorly, just very, very poorly. And that stinks. I've seen guys that are too complex. They want to use a college system in high school, but they have a 10th of the amount of time to get it put in, right? I've seen guys that I perceive were too simple. And then it was just like, every time this formation comes up, this is the play you're going to run. Like it's simplified so much that's down to that. So I have been lucky enough to see all of those aspects. And luckily I ran into people like Joe and Kenny and guys who taught me like, here's all the different variations of ball. Some of the coaches I've got to work for, Bo Collins being one of them, those guys that just kind of show you the light. Like here's what ball can be. Here's what you can go out and do. And outside the gridiron, here's how you can treat kids on the side and help them get ahead, right? It's why I can still pick up my phone and probably get 2 or 3 texts a week from kids that are nowhere near football anymore. They've graduated years ago and they're out working power lines or working pipeline or working, whatever, the local Brahms. I don't know. They're just doing stuff outside of football, and they still want to have contact and be like, man, here's what's going on in life. So I think the perspective is huge, and getting to see that there's not a right way. Kenny, you're big on this one. It's just, what are you? Stay true to yourself. Who are you as a coach? Be that guy. All right, let's jump into the good meat and potatoes here, because, with Kenny, you've obviously done this at your school, and now y'all are we're going to go with perennial powerhouse pretty soon, man.
Whoa.
Pretty soon. You're pretty close.
Now.
You're close. We'll give it another year. So
you guys' live streams pop up on my YouTube as suggested watches all the time, and I don't even search for them. So they're just like, you like football, you need to watch these guys.
Yeah, there's Coach Simpson and his guys doing it. Coach O'Brien, you as well, and so we'll start with you here. You're the guest. You get to bang this one out first too, but I know you don't want to classify it yet as a turnaround, right?
Correct.
You've taken over a school that's had a very tough history. You've won 2 games. We don't want to put any jinx anywhere or any expectations, because you can even go with the Nick Saban rat poison if you want to, right? Even if you are going to win the next 8, talking about it now is not where you want to be. So, but when you came in, understanding that perspective of the kids and the just kind of the climate that was there, what were your first steps into trying to get something successful started?
So you can give a little perspective too. When I took over, the previous head coach it was down to 20. We dressed 22 kids in the final game, and 13 of them were seniors. Sorry, I think I said that backwards. 9 of them were seniors. We had 13 left. So, and that's how many kids were at summer workouts when the coach announced to them that they were not summer workouts, but winter workouts, because it was over winter break. There were 13 kids showing up to winter workouts when he announced to them that he was stepping down. So goal number 1 was to get more bodies onto the team. And the first thing I did is we started making it fun, because our winter workouts were pretty long for them being winter workouts. They were like 2.5 hour winter workouts, which is why a lot of kids weren't wanting to do it. And I've always had this philosophy wherever I've been at, and I've also tried to inject it even when I'm not in charge and I'm like the coordinator, to try to let kids go do other sports and be multi-sport athletes in other seasons. So that was my first big thing, was telling the kids, the 13 that were left, like, you guys can go run track, you guys can go play basketball, go do soccer. And then I immediately turned around and started talking to all those coaches and all the kids on all those teams. And I was like, okay, now when spring football starts, all you guys come play football for me. It'll be fun. We're not going to do our single wing stuff. We're going to spread things out and have some fun and move the ball around and be up tempo. We're going to go play 7-on-7, because that's something they didn't do here. They didn't go and play 7-on-7. So I actually organized one and we hosted it here and invited a bunch of local teams out. And we played a lot of 7-on-7, which got kids excited, wanting to come out. And then when we did the off-season workouts in the summer, we did the points system. We let the kids draft teams and do points, and I let them all name their teams. And they had in the off-season workouts for both winter and summer, we did games on Fridays. So we were going out there and playing dodgeball, we were playing basketball, we were playing soccer, we were playing ultimate football, or we play ultimate frisbee with football. 4th of July, before I let them go on break for 4th of July, we had a hot dog eating contest with them all broken up into teams, and they love that. So
I bet
we just started making it fun for the kids and fun other than football, because like the kids had it drilled into them that you show up, you live for 2 hours, you go home in the off season. It was nope, let's show up. I'd hear a lot to Tony Holler's feed the cat system too. Tony Holler's another one that I'm constantly hitting him up all the time and trying to steal stuff from him. But I was like, nope, let's show up and let's do 30 minutes of speed training. Let's get in the weight room for 30 minutes and then go home. And even that's if you're not doing an off-season sport. If you're in another sport, I don't want to see you till spring football. Go do that sport. But I've done the record boards. We got all our 40 times up in the hallway over here. The kids are getting upset because I haven't updated it in a couple of weeks, and a couple of them have PR'd. They're all getting I've made them pull back on the reins, and we did 20s on Monday yesterday. And a bunch of them PR'd in their 20s, so all of them are already asking, Coach, we're doing 40s next Monday, right? Because I got to get a PR, I got to get a new bone, I got to get another ice pop out of the ice fridge, because every time they PR or get something new, they get to grab an ice pop. They're like, I want an ice pop because I know I'm going to PR on my 40s next week. Let's do 40s next week. I was like,
I love it.
All right, we're doing 40s next week. But yeah, it's making it fun and making it competitive. I was a skeptic of it at first, Tony Holler stuff, because I used to be on that other side of the spectrum where I was like, no, we need to grind for 2-3 hours. And then as soon as I started flipping over to that, when I got my own head coaching job, I realized how much that gets kids to buy in and be competitive on their own. So I'm a big fan of the feed the cats philosophy.
That's awesome. Yeah, the coming into a program that needs that, right? That it needs to have fun. There's nothing fun about going 0-10, right? Or 0 whatever. So getting those kids back in and letting them know it will be fun. I'm glad you're finding some success as well, which just kind of points to like sometimes you just got to have a different voice, right? Sometimes kids just need a different style of ball or whatever. So I think that's really neat. So Kenny, I know you've turned some programs around and found some sustained success. Is there any other things that he missed out on there?
No, I liked a couple of things he said. I'm just going to kind of highlight a few things he said and maybe add one or two. What I wrote down was he said they took the easy wins. Like there's easy wins that everyone can have in the weight room. Like everybody, if you look, unless you're just hurting kids, if you work out, your PRs are going to go up. Like there's lots of ways you can do that. Whatever way you choose to do that. I'm a big Tony Holler fan too, Coach. But there are lots of ways you can do that, but you have to take the easy wins because ultimately our game's about confidence. Confidence in yourself, confidence in who, and so if your kids are getting stronger and getting faster, those are what I call easy wins. Like weight room should always be an easy win place. Numbers up. You got to get your numbers up. Ultimately, we can say all we want, players win games, and coaches usually are the ones that lose games. So the more players you get out that are good players, the odds of you winning the games go up. I like Coach kind of mentioned modernizing. Even if you're not really modernizing, but you're running an old offense from the shotgun, i.e. the gun T, sometimes players buy into some modern this, but we still have a lot of old school principles that we're doing. We run a 3-4 defense. Well, that's basically a 5-2 variation, and so we're modernizing what's good. Now, on that same note, you got to be good at fundamentals. So it can be modernized. You can do really cool stuff, but if, you want to throw the ball and run air raid, no big deal. You better be practicing and be really good at throwing and catching. Like ultimately it's going to come down to your fundamental skills. Like, are you working the fundamentals? Coach mentioned doing things that are more than football. Like I think those are, again, I can kind of go in that easy win category. Mom, son date night, hot dog eating competition, take them out campus and go camp out with them. Lots of options you can go do with your team, or when they realize, hey, this is fun, and we haven't even got into the season yet, a lot of things are naturally going to happen. But you've got to make sure you're intentional in that. Like we had pancake dinner the other night, so Miss Jamie had a bunch of them over, fed them a bunch of pancakes. We've done that every year. They look forward to it. We've done we take our kids to St. Louis the last 3 years. They look forward to that. We do a lot of different things that our kids look for. It could be as simple as, like Coach said, playing dodgeball on whatever, where your kids look forward to it. He also mentioned like they pick their team, so competing, teaching them how to compete correctly, how to compete to win, and then learn from it is important. And the last thing I'll kind of mention on here is, I think in the first book I wrote about the frog analogy. When you go into a program that hasn't had a lot of success, if you come in there the way you want to come in, sometimes you're going to run off all the frogs. So basically the analogy goes, and you've all probably heard it before, stick a frog in boiling water, it's going to jump out of the water. Okay, if you stick a frog in water and you slowly turn the heat up, it will literally sit there until it boils to death. You got to see where you are as a program, and usually I think we were 0-27 too, Coach. It's kind of ironic my job here. 0-27, 0 whatever. If you go in there and just turn it to full blast heat, unless they got 90 kids on the roster, you're not going to have a team. So you got to be aware of, we got low numbers. We haven't had success. I know this is the standard I want to get to, but I got to slowly build to it. Like I can't just come in there and say, here's where we're going to be, because these kids aren't ready for that. Like we've got to, that's our goal, and we're going to slowly build. And each year we get a little bit better. Now I can rev up whatever the next step is to it. And a lot of times as a young coach, we just want to come in and guns blazing, and you're going to run off all your kids. And so you have to kind of be aware of where are we? How do we build to where we want to go? And now we're at the part where, man, I can be a jerk because our kids are ready for that standard. Because we need that right now. Like to go from good to great, you got to have a little bit of that in you,
Yeah.
But to go from really bad to good, you could probably be a lot nicer and kind of slowly get it there.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'll say it. Fundamentals are the thing that I preach to them. They're kind of getting it because most of them don't know football. Majority of the kids at our school are playing football for the first time. And you guys probably know in Florida with the transfer rule, it's bananas down here. How kids can just kid this week, I think, just transferred to another school. I was a starting quarterback at one school, and he's at another school now in the same county, playing against the school he just played against. So it's bananas. So kids aren't transferring. We're not getting the kids that are the 4-star, 5-star kids transferring to our school. We're getting the kids that don't know how to put their knee pads in their pants, and they're coming out and they don't know they need a mouthpiece, don't know how to put their helmet on. They're trying football because their friend tried football. So they're all brand new. But I was going to say the Kinney's down blocking, that's what we do. We're a gap run team out of shotgun sets and up tempo sets, but we're Gus Malzahn's. We run power right, counter left. And we just ran for 346 yards, and I called 2 run plays, power right, counter left. Tagging different little things like you like to do, Daniel. We just move little pieces on the outside, but that's our core 2 principles. And down blocking is, if I start saying down blocking, all the O-linemen know, they start pairing up, putting their hands up because they know they're about to go into their down blocking indie drill. So that we rep on that every day. That's what's helped us the most. Is we've started winning up front. And that's really our running backs learned this week. It's really easy to run behind a line that gets to their spots and gets their down blocks and gets out into their pulls.
Got to win it in the trenches.
Yep.
Got to work in the trenches, right? Create the scene, and nothing else matters. All right, let's jump in the last part here, gentlemen. I know we're going to press right against the clock here for Kenny. Kenny's got to go on and do. Apparently, he has a job. I don't know what that's all about. Keys to I want to know the keys, and since you both have done it, you've both become head coaches. What are those keys to a coach that's wanting to move up in their role? And so, Coach O'Brien, we'll start with you here because I know Kenny's talked about this many times, and so I'm sure he can hit the hot spots that you don't. But just if you right now you're sitting as a assistant coach, maybe fairly new, what does it look like? What does a coach need to be doing to get to move up?
I'm going to say exactly what both my father and grandfather told me when I was going into my first graduate assistant job, which is you better be the hardest worker in the room. And that's what I've been since day one. Even as the head football coach, I'm still the hardest worker in the room. Nobody's going to show up before me. Nobody's going to stay after me. I'm going to do all the crappy jobs that nobody wants to do. And I'm going to do them until somebody taps me on the shoulder and tells me not to do them. So that's kind of one of my traits I can say I'm needing to learn from as a head coach now is I'm still that guy. So I was still like carrying the water racks in off the field. And one of the assistant coaches came up to me and was like, stop, give me a water rack. Like I'm still picking stuff up in the locker room. I'm still walking around in the weight room, picking up weights. And they're all like, stop, go. I was telling him I was about to get on the podcast. I'm trying to get a couple of kids out of the locker room. One of my assistants comes in and goes, get out of here. I got this. Go. And I'm like, sorry. That's how I've always been. But hardest work in the room. And then I learn from everybody, even kids, people in other professions. I'm constantly learning. If you're not learning, you're not getting better as a football coach. If you're not constantly evaluating yourself, you're not getting better as a football coach. I think the thing I try to learn the most of now is the opposite or whatever I'm weakest at. So for the longest time, I didn't know that much of offensive line play. I've always been a skill player. So I really dove in the last 2 years to learning O-line play and proper blocking at O-line, which ironically enough, I ended up this year not having an O-line coach. My O-line coach got elevated to a assistant athletic director position. So this entire season I've been without an O-line coach. So I've been the O-line coach, and we're having our most successful season running the football because I spent the time and putting the effort to learn how to properly block gap run game. So now we have the flexibility to do that. So now it's something my dad taught me from day one. He said, you better learn, if you're going to be a head football coach, you better learn how to coach every single position, and you better have a philosophy in every single position. You better have drills to run at every single position if you ever get put into an indie drill. So having that flexibility to hop in for any job needed on and off the field, and then having a philosophy that when you do get the chance, because with my younger assistants right now, I'm giving them opportunities to coach like our JV staff. And if those guys continue to step up, they're going to get more responsibility. And that's exactly what happens to guys that are wanting to move up. If you show the head football coach you're willing to work and you're willing to learn, he's going to give you more jobs to do. And that's just more things to put onto your resume and more chances for you to move up.
I love it. Coach Simpson, we'll go right to you here.
Yeah, I mean, he hit a ton of them. I think all of those are great things. I'd just add in a few. I'd say that relationships you make are going to matter, and so I don't think you have to be that social butterfly at clinics, but it sure doesn't hurt. I mean, it does not hurt to have 3 or 4 different guys that you have formed a relationship with that may turn into being an AD one day. They're the ones making the decision on the coach. And so I think relationships probably matter a lot more than we want to give credit for. So I think you need to be intentional in that world. I was not very good in that world. I wanted to go be the hardest worker like coach. I wanted to go coach ball. I did all the things coach did. But I'm not going to go out of my way to kiss someone's rear end. Like, that's just not who I am. But they matter. I mean, like, a lot of guys get jobs because of who they know. So it is important that, one, you do a great job where you are. Like, you do a great job where you are. You're not just out there searching for a job and doing a crappy job where you are. Okay. Second thing I'd say is you need to be upfront with your current head coach. Like, I do have a desire to be a head coach one day. Maybe it's for you if you leave, or maybe it's another school. And a good head coach shouldn't get offended by that. Like, it shouldn't get upset by the fact that you have a desire to be a head coach somewhere. So, because he may know of some things that you may not know of, then he can also, like Coach mentioned, he's working with his assistants. If I know you want to be a head coach, I'll give you more responsibilities, because now the work ethic has to match what you told me. You can't tell me I want to be a head coach and be the last dude in and not know. I mean, if you tell me you want to be a head coach, though, and you show that you're willing, then I can probably give you some more responsibilities in that world that might help you get ready. But I loved all the stuff he mentioned, and I promise you, if you want to be a head coach, it would behoove you to know how to coach each position. Otherwise, you're going to be really stuck hoping you can bring in great help. Now, when I hire a coach, I can hire the best coach. If he does O-line, great. If he doesn't do O-line, I can do O-line. If I need to go coach defense, I can coach defense. I've got that experience. So I do think as you're building up your resume, it's good to work on both sides of the football. It's good to work on the back end and the front end. I think it's good to work with the special teams. If you can volunteer to help with whatever that might be, that should help you prepare to be a head coach. But, to me, once you become a head coach, that's a whole new podcast you could do. But to get a head coach job, like Coach said, work hard, show them you're ready, be ready on both sides of the football. And then I'd also, again, add in, meet as many people as you can, because those are the people who are going to be making the higher choices.
Love it. All right, let's jump into the last part here, gentlemen, the situation of the week. And Coach O'Brien, we want to come to you with this because you're the one that's doing it right now. And something that a lot of coaches listen to our podcast are trying to turn around programs that haven't had a lot of success. And the very first time something bad happens on Friday night, all the heads hang because here we go again, right? It's the same old. And so you said you've already experienced this at least once this year. So what are you doing to combat that? What's something you found that successfully got those kids back in the game? Maybe that night, maybe it took a week.
Took us about 1 week, and I'll just set the situation. So in Florida, we get one preseason game. We ironically played the previous head coach here in our preseason game. So the first game, these kids, after spending an off season here, they got to play the previous head coach, and they won. And they were really up for the game. I didn't have to do much to get them pumped up for that game. They were up for it. Won 28-6 against them, and then we turned around and we were playing it. So and they were hurting for numbers as well, so they were running single wing. Team we were playing week 1 also runs single wing. So we were also thinking as a staff, like, perfect. We can just line up and do exactly what we did last week. Team we were facing hit the weight room a lot harder than the team we played during the first week. So they had a big 6'2", 210-pound running back in their single wing that thumped us right from the start, and we could not tackle him. He ended up going off for like 300 yards against us. We ended up still having a pretty good offensive game, which I will say after being with these kids last year and coaching them last year, it was. Every team we were playing, once they scored that first touchdown, heads dropped, everybody was done, everybody was checked out. We knew, like, I'm just looking at the clock, like, all right, how can they get 35 so we can go home, so we can get the running clock and get out of here? It happened again when they drove right down the field and scored on us with their big kid, and we weren't tackling well. But our offense responded and scored. And then it turned into a football game the rest of the game. And it was back and forth. They'd go down and score. We'd go down and score. They'd go down and score. We'd go down and score. Then came down to we had a long drive. Our young quarterback, who's his first time playing quarterback, we do a little tunnel and go screen. We thought we had him. Quarterback put it down the middle of the field instead of outside the numbers. Ball gets picked off. They hang on to the ball, run the clock out, win the football game on us. We couldn't get the stop we needed. They had a 13-minute drive in the fourth quarter to crush us. And that one was like all the kids were hanging their heads because they were all up for it. They thought they had the game this week. And then some of them were way too arrogant, way too cocky, going around telling people how we were going to get our first win this week. The news crew showed up, the local news crew, because they were thinking they were going to film the win, and it didn't happen. So I sat there on Monday and explained to the kids that, gentlemen, you came out and got punched right in the mouth, and you did have a bit of a response, but we didn't have the physical response that we needed. Let's lock in and focus on the physical response. And then every Monday meeting, I try to treat it like a college program. We have a theme for every week. We have a theme word, kind of like the team theme saying, and I'll go through, and there's a lesson. And our one for the next week was toughness. We talked about how we weren't tough as a team. Here's how you can be tougher. And it's not just like physically, getting hit and stuff. It's being able to respond to a loss. What a perfect opportunity for us to go through this week, get our great win, technically not happen, not get the streak, get punched in the mouth by a team that perfectly matches up against us, and they get another opportunity to go out and make a change and make a difference about it. I had told everybody I had gone out and shook the coach's hand at the 50-yard line and told him, thank you for kicking our butt. I said a different word to him, but I said, thank you for coming out and kicking our butt. We needed this. Our kids needed to toughen up. They were way too cocky for this game. And we did. We locked in and ended up getting our next game against another team that ran a version of the wing tee and tried to run it down our throats. And our kids stepped up. And one of our defensive linemen who struggled tackling last year had 16 tackles and was player of the week for the area. And our running back ended up getting player of the week for the area, ended up rushing for like 250 yards the next game, and our kids responded. And it was exactly what we needed. And our kids even started to buy in of realizing that when you have adversity, it's a good thing. We had one of our junior linemen, because the other thing we do is on game day, whatever the theme is for the week, one of our kids in our leadership council has to get up and give they find a YouTube video and give a little talk to the team. They give kind of like the pump up talk before we go get dressed before the game. And our senior, one of our leadership linemen, our left guard, gets up and talks about how he had missed everybody. Like, I was way too cocky. I didn't handle it. I didn't play the game I should have had. I got on some of my teammates in a way, and I wasn't a leader during the game. But because we had this loss, he showed a Jocko Willink video that was perfect about the video is called Good. If anybody wants to YouTube that video and use that one, highly recommend it to all you coaches out there. That was a great one. I love that one. The Jocko Willink video, Good, of how when you lose, good. And good is always the response. Oh, you had a bad day? Good. Oh, you're sore this morning? Good. Because it's adversity, and adversity allows you to respond in a better way than it would just having it easy and having the win. So when he had that one, I'm like standing there next to him, like, lads, God, like, I'm ready to go right now. Yeah, but it was our kids getting to see that. So that's how we did it this year. And we kind of had I had the picture I show them every week is the what success looks, what everybody thinks success looks like and what success actually looks like. And it's the, what everybody thinks success looks like, and it's the straight line up. And it's what success really looks like. And it's like like this, where it's like every time you hit adversity, it goes down and then comes back up. So every time we've had a win this year, I do the little like you are here on the map. And as we're like working our way up the map. So the kids know we've had win, loss, that they're like, every time they get that adversity, they need to respond. So our whole theme this week is, hey, let's stop doing this and let's have our first opportunity to learn our lesson ahead of time, and let's keep this win thing going and not have to get punched in the face to learn from it. Let's finally us do the punching this week.
I love it. It's a great answer, man. A lot of guys will be taken from that, because whether it's giving it back, I like the way you gave it back to the kids. Like, you've got to help build the resiliency too, right? The coaches can't want it more than you. So if you can't go out there and be resilient, doesn't matter how good my play calling is. I'm a very resilient play caller. I can always call on the play, right? But you gotta execute. So that's good. All right. Well, we are a little pressed for time. We're going to push through these ads real quick. If you haven't yet, look up Ace Sports. Look at the video boards. Mark.bridges@acesports.com is the place to shoot an email. Mark will get you hooked up with the local rep in your area. They're starting a little bit of a social media presence, so start looking for that to come out, and you'll know what guys are in your area, what rep you need to be talking to. Social media-wise, Coach, if somebody wants to reach out to you and have a conversation about ball, where do they reach out to?
Actually not a social media person, and that is intentional. I used to be a big one. Me and my wife were one of those, like, we got rid of all our social media stuff. Good. And we're doing the non-social media thing. You can get in touch with me via my email, Cullen, CULLENJO @leeschools.net. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me, and I will reach out pretty quickly. I got my email on my phone, and I'm true to my word when I say I love talking ball and love learning from anybody. I don't care what level of experience you're at. You're welcome to come talk ball. And if anybody's ever in the Southwest Florida area, our door is open here at Ida Baker High School. Anybody's allowed to come out to our practice, and we're always looking for more coaches and even new ideas if anybody just wants to come out and check out a practice at any time.
Love it. Love it. I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Kenny, where are you at, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So FBCoachSimpson.com, FBCoachSimpson@gmail.com, and FB Coach Simpson on Twitter or X. I
love it. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter/X. Coach, once again, man, thank you so very much for coming on the show today. Appreciate the input and getting to hear a story and your time at the collegiate level and just all the things, man. It just reinforces what we say here all the time. Just kind of be true to yourself. Go where you're happy and where you're, not just tolerated, but celebrated. So appreciate you, man. Thank you for being a listener of the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.